This is where he grew up. He knows every inch of this property, and there are several areas that he's able to hide in.
2 inmates break out of a jail, and you will never believe how they did it. Now they're both back behind bars. It's a story involving accomplices, the FBI, and it may not be over. I break it down for you. Welcome to Crime Fix. I'm Angenette Levy. Breaking out of jail is not something that is supposed to be easy, but for 2 inmates in a jail in Ohio, it doesn't sound like it was all that hard. This story begins in Georgetown, which is less than 50 miles southeast of Cincinnati. It's in Brown County, a rural county on the Ohio River. These 2 men, Roy Gene Butler and Jerry Lee Cooper, were housed in the Brown County jail there. But on September 15th, the sheriff says they broke out of the jail through a window. Yes, you heard me right. They broke out of the jail through a window. It really doesn't even seem like something that should be possible in this day and age. But that's what happened. The men made a break for it, according to the sheriff. Butler and Cooper stole a pedal boat. Yeah, a pedal boat, and crossed the Ohio River to Kentucky, and then they split up. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, okay, well, why were these 2 in jail in the first place? Well, Jerry Lee Cooper was in for conspiracy to murder a man and attempted murder. The prosecutor says Cooper was paid $150 to kill a man, so he got a ride from Kentucky to Ohio, shot the man in the chest with a borrowed gun, and then got a ride back to Kentucky. Thankfully, that victim survived. So Jerry Lee Cooper was awaiting trial at the Brown County Jail on those charges. Roy Gene Butler was in jail on drug trafficking charges and having a weapon as a convicted felon. Now, word spread around the small river city of Maysville, Kentucky, that a man accused of trying to kill someone was on the loose. And people were freaked out. They were locking themselves inside their houses. And in that area, a lot of people own guns. So they were keeping those guns close. And to make it even scarier, this wasn't the first time that Jerry Lee Cooper was accused of escaping from a jail. No. Back in 2002, he escaped from a jail in Kentucky and was sentenced to 10 years in prison for that. Yikes. So the search was on for these 2, Roy Gene Butler and Jerry Lee Cooper. And it didn't take long to find Butler. Deputies picked him up the morning after he and Cooper escaped, according to the sheriff. But that was the morning of September 16th. The search was still on for Jerry Cooper, and it was all hands on deck. Even the FBI was brought in to help.
We are extremely exhausted, but we're not going to stop our efforts again. We're trying to cover over 1,200 acres of his hunting land. This is where he grew up. He knows every inch of this property, and there are several areas that he's able to hide in. The woods are so dense, even at night, we cannot penetrate them with thermal imaging, or at least it's very hard to do that. We have canines out now in the area looking for him, and again, we are using as much resources as we can to locate him. And our priority is to do that right now.
So that was the sheriff of Mason County, Kentucky, and he was updating people then on September 20th. At that point, Jerry Cooper had been on the run for nearly 5 days, and it was taxing for the deputies in his office.
While we continue to answer our calls for service to our community and perform our various other duties, most personnel here has not been home with their children, with their wives, with their spouses, again, we know it's frustrating, but I guarantee you that we are more frustrated than anyone because he's still out there. So we are going to find him, and it may take some time. We want to thank all the people that have provided food to us and drinks and support. We've had several people bring us gear and side-by-sides and equipment to get around these woods, and we're very very thankful for that. We're very thankful to see our community rally behind us here and help us with our mission.
So here's where the FBI comes in. The agency offered a $10,000 reward, and they got a tip that Jerry Lee Cooper had called his sister from someone's phone number. The feds got a warrant and figured out the person that Cooper's sister called was named Marlena Strasbaugh. The FBI, they weren't messing around here. They traced Marlena Strasbaugh and figured out that she had driven to a home in Louisville, Kentucky. So the FBI and sheriff's deputies, they track down Marlena Strasbaugh's white Cadillac Escalade and they pull her over. This is drone video of the stop, and you can see her get out of the vehicle. She's wearing a blue t-shirt. An FBI agent says that Marlena told them that Jerry Lee Cooper had come out of the woods near her house, and she called him an old acquaintance. She recognized him and that he offered her money to drive him to Louisville to a woman's home. Marlena's husband, William Strasbaugh, was also in the SUV. Marlena Strasbaugh and William Strasbaugh are now in jail facing charges of hindering prosecution or apprehension. The FBI says that Marlena told them that Cooper's sister actually sent her $25 to drive her brother to this woman's house in Louisville. So the FBI went to that woman's house on Monday night, and they took Jerry Lee Cooper into custody when they saw him come outside. And you can see that he has changed his appearance dramatically. So I want to bring in Colin Schmidt. He's a retired FBI agent, also an expert witness with Cronus Litigation Experts. So Colin, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your time. First of all, I just need your reaction because this is the first thing that hit me when I started reading about this case. I'm shocked that in 2025, 2 inmates in a county jail can break out through a window.
Well, it seems like it's a matter of complacency. Is the jail staff just simply are not, frankly, doing their job? Because this is, I think, the 3rd or 4th instance of this happening. I think there was a big one down in New Orleans and a couple other places. So it really kind of comes down to the sheriff of that county cracking down on, nonsense going on in these jails and holding the people accountable, because they have one job, and their job is to keep people, incarcerated.
Keep them incarcerated, and while they're in there, keep them safe, and obviously make sure that they're not able to just bust out like this. Like I'm just like, it sounds like something on 1982 in the Dukes of Hazzard or something to me. I mean, that's literally what I think of when I started reading about this case. So then these 2 guys, Butler and Cooper, they crawl out of the window of the jail, which is still in my mind unbelievable that could happen in 2025. And then the police say they run down to the Ohio River and steal a paddle boat and paddle across the river. Now we're like back to the 1800s. I feel like we're like in a chapter of Huck Finn or something, the Huckleberry Finn. So they do this and they cross the Ohio River, and then these 2 dudes split up. I mean, your thoughts on that?
Well, there was no planning. I think they were like, they came across this window that was not secure. They got out, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, shoot, what do we do now? So they were just reacting to their circumstances. And then basically, okay, this is the only way we're going to get across the river. And they stole it. And it sounds pretty ridiculous if it was a TV plot. But that's really the bottom line. And then they split up, and then it doesn't appear that they were too hard to find as far as their where they went to.
Yeah, I mean, they did. The one guy was harder to find. A Butler, they find him the next day, I guess, in the woods somewhere. So he wasn't too hard to find. But the other guy, this Cooper, they're looking for him in the woods. They're talking about how it's like some thick brush and stuff like that. You've got rural sheriff's offices. Not that they couldn't do this, not that they couldn't find him, but they don't maybe have the resources that somebody like the FBI would. And this Cooper, Jerry Lee Cooper, he's accused of killing somebody or trying to kill somebody. It's an attempted murder case, an attempted hit for $150, shooting somebody in the chest, which is just unbelievable to me as well. So do you think that that's why they brought the FBI in? Because the FBI obviously would have more resources to bring to the table in trying to track this guy down?
Exactly. So if it was, I had a case like that when I was in the FBI on a SWAT team where we had an escaped inmate, and and when they brought the local county that was up in rural Wisconsin, brought us in for a couple of different reasons. Number one, we had a SWAT team that was equipped to handle an armed subject, but even more importantly, we were able to put a FLIR up in the air, which is basically a airplane or a helicopter that had this infrared technology to find out if somebody's in between under the brush. So it really comes down to, they brought in the FBI because obviously the human resources, but because of the technology that the FBI brings to their cases.
Mm-hmm. And we learned a lot in this affidavit about the technology that the FBI brought to the table. And a lot of it had to do with cell phone technology. And so they were able to, get this exigent circumstances warrant or whatever. And they were able to get some cell phone records and determined that, Cooper was talking to somebody and his sister was talking to this Marlena Staubach woman and cash apping her. And that's really how they were able to track this guy down and figure it out.
Yeah, so that what they did is they got a UFAP warrant, unauthorized flight to avoid prosecution, and the purpose of that is to create a federal jurisdiction for the FBI, because the FBI doesn't inherently have jurisdiction to chase down escaped local criminals. Now, they can do that with federal criminal or federal prisoners that escape prison. And secondly, the FBI is arguably the best in the world at cell phone forensics, and especially tracking phones. They have something called the CAS team, which is basically agents that are trained in exploiting information off of phones and off of cell towers. And in this day and age, if somebody has a phone, the FBI is going to find them. That's just the bottom line.
And we've seen that. We've heard all about the CAS technology and that team. We heard about it in the Kohberger case. That was really utilized quite a bit. Because that case never went to trial, we never heard the testimony of Nick Balance, who was going to testify about that stuff and the pings. But, there's a lot of back and forth about, well, is that really that accurate and all this stuff? But you're saying you believe, as a retired FBI agent, that it is pretty accurate. And it's my understanding, too, if you don't have all the data, they do stuff like drive testing to try to get some data as well, collect it that way.
Yeah, and I wasn't on the CAS team, so I can't really get too far into the weeds on that. But basically, it's a matter of just physics. They're triangulating the signal between different cell towers, and because of the power of the signal, that's how they kind of can hone it in. And then the other thing is all phones have GPS technology on it, so that's the other way that phones are identified. And then the third way would be if they're accessing Google or some of these browsers. The Google, captures your GPS when you go on there. And then if they're using certain browsers like Bing or any of the other ones, once again, it captures your GPS. So there's 4 or 5 different ways where the FBI can identify the location of a phone.
Interesting. Back to this guy, Jerry Lee Cooper, it worked. They were able to do it. They were able, it was effective technology, and it showed that it was accurate. I want to talk about how dangerous somebody like this could potentially be, if they're cornered. This is a guy who is willing to bust out of jail. He's willing, according to prosecutors, go to somebody's house that he doesn't even know for $150 and shoot them in the chest. So you corner somebody like that or encounter somebody like that who's on the run, there's no telling what they could do.
Well, and that's why I'm sure they use SWAT teams in overwhelming force. So if they do, or when they did find him or corner him, he doesn't have a choice. And if he does want to go suicide by cop, the law enforcement's going to ensure that they're not going to be harmed. So somebody like that is essentially, you know, he's an antisocial person. Likely his only place he's going to live for the rest of his life is in a prison cell, because he just simply can't integrate or operate in a social setting for whatever reason, because he just simply can't help himself.
So they tracked this guy to Louisville, Kentucky. I mean, it's probably about between hour and a half, 2 hour drive from where he escaped, if not a little longer. And by that time, he has changed his appearance, completely shaved his head. The accomplices who were accused of helping him apparently allowed him into their home. That's where he shaved his head, cleaned himself up, got some new clothes, and they drive him down to a woman's house in Louisville, and that's where they're able to track him, and they find him with this woman. The woman is not charged at this point. They do corner him, and they are, you know, it is a SWAT team, an FBI SWAT team. We have a photograph of that. That couple, the William and Marlena, they are charged because they drove him. They're charged with assisting him. Why is his sister and the other woman, why are they not maybe facing charges as well?
Well, it's speculating that they cooperated, that they probably assisted law enforcement in identifying and finding him. And so that would be the reason why they would not be charged. So, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to charge him in the future, because a case like this, they're going to continue to do investigation. Obviously, you're going to start at the county lockup to find out what happened, to see if anybody helped him there, because we're seeing instances of that, as well as of jail personnel helping inmates get out. And then they're going to go ahead and do a timeline and do the entire investigation to see if there was anybody else that assisted him, because they're going to bring them all to justice, because escaping a county lockup, it is just beyond the pale. It's ridiculous for that to even happen. And I'm sure the sheriff of that county, you can't even describe how irritated the guy is right now that this happened on his watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he probably is. We've tried to get an interview with him, and he's not really coming out and doing that. Yeah, that's like the ultimate, that's the big failure here, is the fact that two guys between 10:30 and 11:30 at night, they know when this happened, between 10:30 and 11:30 at night, were able to bust out of a window at a county jail. And that's, to me, like the most absurd part of this, because shouldn't your jail be more secure than that? And if they were able to bust out, somebody wasn't watching closely enough for that to happen.
Well, that kind of leads me to speculate that it was an insider that assisted them, that somebody kind of told them where to go, what to do, or, turned a blind eye to their behavior for whatever reason. So not only is the county detectives going to be looking into this, but it sounds like this is probably the state, maybe even the FBI, are going to be doing the investigation to find out if there was any accomplices, because they certainly have to be brought to bear, because if not, then more prisoners are going to end up going out windows in that jail. Yeah,
you can't have, crooked corrections officers, because that's what they would be. They would be crooked. They're not doing their jobs if they're letting people bust out of windows and escape jail, if that's the case.
Exactly. So corruption is the number one concern of any law enforcement executive. To ensure that he has an upstanding workforce that's going to do the job that they're paid to do, because one bad apple spoils the barrel, like they say. So he's got to go in there aggressively, or whomever the sheriff is, and find out what happened. And if there was anybody that assisted, they need to be brought to justice immediately.
So you believe there's probably, and should be, if there's not, an internal investigation underway right now?
I would recommend an external investigation where you bring outside criminal investigation in to interview everybody, because those small departments, usually there's generational employees that they've known each other for decades. So you need somebody that's completely independent to come in and interview everybody, and to ensure that the investigation has complete integrity.
Yeah, no doubt.
Well, I just think this case is crazy. I think it's nuts that somebody can bust out of a window in a jail. I mean, if it's not strong enough, like, then you've got major security issues right there. Your jail is not secure if somebody can, like, bust out of a window in 2025. Just my opinion, Colin. You're the expert. I've covered this stuff for a while, and I've been through county jails. I've seen their windows. Sometimes they're not even big enough where you can, like, crawl through them. But your thoughts on that?
Well, I actually had a case when I was in the FBI where I had an informant who was telling me about a potential prisoner escape. And then when I brought that to the attention of the jail authorities in Milwaukee, they cracked down and they took care of business, so to speak. And this was one where they were going to tie bed sheets together and slither out of a window. So that's another thing is their county jails are full of informants, and that would be another avenue for the investigators is talk to those informants to find out, okay, what was going on, why did this happen, and what's the word on the street, so to speak.
Yeah, most definitely. I'm sure there is somebody in there willing to tell and talk for some case consideration. Colin Schmidt, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So Jerry Lee Cooper and Roy Jean Butler are both charged with escape in Ohio, and they're both in jail in Kentucky. They'll have to be extradited back to Ohio to face criminal charges there. And that's it for this episode of Crime Fix. I'm Angenette Levy. Thanks so much for being with me. I'll see you back here next time.